Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our December 3rd Pearson public meeting. Next slide, please. For those of you who haven't attended a Pearson public meeting in the past, these are part of our noise management forums. The noise management forums are the way that the Airport Authority, as well as our industry partners, such as NAV Canada, work with the community to share updates on airport operations and the different noise mitigation efforts that are underway to offset some of the impacts of our operations. This is our Pearson public meeting, open to all members of the public, and this is a chance for us to provide airport operations updates and how you're impacted, to, as I said, hear updates on our noise management efforts, and for residents to ask questions directly of industry that about things that are related to the airport and may be impacting you. Some of you may have joined for our drop-in sessions when you had the chance to sit down and review operations with someone from NAV Canada or from the GTAA. This is the public meeting portion of the event, and I just would like to note that this is being recorded and will be posted to our website. In this meeting, and actually just if you don't mind going to the next slide, and then we'll review today's agenda. In today's meeting, we'll start with an airport situational update, which is a general update on what's been happening at the airport. Specifically of interest right now, of course, is our Healthy Airport Initiative's response to COVID-19. Then we'll move into an airport operations update. The intent of this is to give residents just a general overview of how the airport operates and which areas are impacted by which operations. And so this will help you identify where you live and what you're impacted by for reference for future conversations. Following that, we'll have an update from NAV Canada. Following that, we'll have a general update from the GTAA. And after that, we open the floor to residents to ask questions directly of us. So what we'll do is after each section, we'll pause to see if there's any questions related to what was just presented. And then following that is sort of the more general plenary session at the end, that question period, when you can ask questions about that you came to have answered tonight or specific to where you live and the operations overhead. So thank you all very much for your time, and I'll hand it over to my colleague, Michael Mandel, who will start with our airport operational update.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin. As you might expect, the COVID-19 impact to aviation across Canada and in fact globally has been staggering. You can see that borne out in the Q3 2020 statistics here. There's a lot of numbers on the slide, but essentially passenger traffic at Toronto Pearson is down 88% year over year in Q3 2020. Aircraft movements were down by 76% year over year in Q3 of this year. And this is reflected in aircraft movements in the restricted hours. So those hours between 12:30 a.m. and 6:30 a.m., aircraft movements are down by 69%. And of course, with those kind of numbers and a business that depends very heavily on passenger traffic, there isn't a part of our business that hasn't been significantly impacted when you think about retail, food and beverage, parking. So that should just wanted to give you some context for the slides to come here. With that, we can move to the next slide. Right now at Toronto Pearson, we're focused on the health and well-being of the traveling public and our workforce as the #1 priority. We launched our Healthy Airport commitment in June of this year. So you can see here, many of you might be familiar with the Transport Canada regulations in terms of what's happening pre-departure and what's happening upon arrival in terms of COVID-19 screening. For our part, we've introduced a number of healthy airport measures at Toronto Pearson specifically. So that includes mandatory masks for all workers and passengers, actively promoting physical distancing, restricting terminal access to passengers only, and increased hygiene and cleaning, particularly of high-touch areas. In terms of screening international arriving passengers, we're working with Transport Canada, Canada Border Services Agency, Public Health Agency of Canada, and of course Peel Public Health to ensure that passengers are screened again prior to boarding a plane, again on arrival, and then making sure they're quarantining as required when they leave the airport. So it's really a coordinated effort that involves all of our partners, airline, business, and government partners. So we can move to the next slide, please. You can see here that we're accelerating the pace of innovation, introducing no-touch, low-touch solutions to deliver that healthy airport experience. We're disinfecting high-touch areas with UV light. We've installed a sanitation corridor, introduced autonomous floor cleaners, and are monitoring air quality that passengers can see in real time. So that's just to give you a sense of a few of the innovative ways that we're thinking about a healthy airport and that are up and running right now. Next slide, please. I should also mention we're leading on COVID-19 testing. We know that reopening air travel will involve some level of testing. That's why with Air Canada, we have a testing study underway for international arriving passengers in Terminal 1. This study, led by McMaster Health Labs, is the largest and only study in the world of its kind and is providing important scientific data related to the length of quarantine. Essentially how it works is voluntary testing is conducted upon arrival and then again on day 7 and day 14 of quarantine. So we've seen some interim results released in mid-November, and based on more than 20,000 tests conducted on more than 8,600 study participants, what we're seeing is that 99% of study participants tested negative for COVID-19. Of the 1% who tested positive, 70% were detected on arrival and the remainder on day 7. So I'd characterize those results as very encouraging. They strongly suggest that testing can provide a viable alternative to a blanket 14-day quarantine and also provide a way to reduce travel restrictions more generally. Next slide, please. We can see this being borne out in practice at the moment with a COVID-19 testing trial that's up and running at the Calgary Airport in November. So that started in November of this year. The trial is running in conjunction with the province and federal government. Essentially, travelers are offered a COVID-19 test upon arrival. If the test comes back negative, they're not required to remain in quarantine as long as they commit to certain restrictions and to undergoing a second test on day 6 or 7 after arrival. And we're hopeful that by working with the province of Ontario, the federal government will be in a position very soon to introduce a similar testing program at Toronto Pearson, essentially using testing as another measure to safeguard air travel and potentially reduce the length of quarantine. So I know that's a lot of information, hopefully helpful information. we'd be happy to take your questions if you have any.
Any questions? No?
Thank you. Normally, we might not give such a detailed update of initiatives that are happening in terminal. This is generally more in regards to airspace operations. But we did think it was incredibly important, obviously, given how travel has changed and how airport and aviation has had to adapt as a result of COVID-19. We did want to be sure that residents understood all the initiatives that the airport were undertaking to make sure that that experience was safe, and you can have confidence in that. So thank you very much, Michael, for joining us.
All right, hello everyone. So this is Ryan Lees from the GTAA, and as Robin mentioned, I'll be quickly running everyone through an overview of operations here at the airport. So just quickly, a bit about Toronto Pearson. So prior to COVID, Toronto Pearson was actually the 6th most connected airport in the world, and we facilitated around 50 million passengers a year and almost 500,000 aircraft movements a year. Obviously, the impact on the economy was huge, directly employing 49,000 people and enabling $42 billion of Ontario's GDP. So a massive operation, obviously, unfortunately, that's been impacted by COVID. We're open 24 hours a day, and a typical day is divided into first normal operating hours, or our daytime hours, which run from 6:30 a.m. to midnight. And then we have our preferential runway system hours and our restricted hours. So the preferential runway hours, those run from midnight to 6:29 a.m. And those are the hours where we typically get a lot less traffic. And so we can take advantage of that low traffic to use some configurations that allow us to operate in a way that impacts the fewest amount of people during those noise sensitive hours. And then we also have our restricted hours, which run from 12:30 to 6:29 a.m. And those restricted hours are governed by a night flight restriction program. And that program is in place to essentially put a budget on the number of annual movements that we're allowed to have during those nighttime hours. And the night flights work out to approximately 4% of our total annual movements each year. So here's just a quick overview of our operations from the third quarter of 2019 compared to the third quarter of this year. So as you can see, again, obviously COVID has had some pretty significant impacts. We've had 1,000 fewer flights per day on average in the third quarter of this year compared to last year. And during the nighttime, where we had 45 flights during the night in 2019, we're now at about 14 on average in 2020. So that translates to overall traffic being down about 76% and night flight traffic being down about 69%. So now I just want to quickly go over the runways that we have here at Pearson. So we have 5 physical runways. 2 runways go in the north-south direction, and those are runway 15 left, 33 right, and 15 right, 33 left. And then we have 3 runways that go in the east-west direction. So runway 05, 23, runway 06 left, 24 right, and then 06 right, 24 left. And each of these runways, as you can see from the way that they're numbered, they can be used from both ends. So even though there's 5 physical runways, there's 10 operational ends that we can use for arriving and departing aircraft. And this is just a picture of those runways. So as you can see, you see the 5 runways there, each with 2 ends that operations can go off of. You can see based on the compass down in the bottom left there that even though I referred to them on the last slide as our north-south, east-west runways, they don't point exactly north-south or east and west. They're slightly offset from those directions, but for ease of reference, we refer to them as our north-south and our east-west runways. So here I just wanted to talk everyone through something called the runway circuit pattern. And the runway circuit pattern is a procedure that pilots and air traffic controllers use here in Toronto to give arriving aircraft a structured flight path to fly in order to safely and efficiently land at Pearson. And so the runway circuit pattern is broken up into 3 different parts. The first part is called the downwind. And that's the part of the arrival where the aircraft is flying parallel to the runway, but in the opposite direction of landing. The aircraft then makes a turn towards the runway, which is called the base leg. And then from the base leg, the aircraft turns towards the runway onto the final approach, which is where the aircraft is lined up with the runway center line and descends to the ground to land. So the reason I wanted to talk everyone through the runway circuit pattern is because of something interesting in the flight tracks that is worth mentioning, and the way that those flight tracks materialize. So if you look here, you can see the downwind and the final approach phases. They're very precise areas of the approach. On these parts of the approach, planes need to be very precisely spaced apart from one another in order to keep safe and efficient flow of traffic. However, you can see that on the base turns happen from many different locations, and so they tend to expand and contract, and they happen over a broader area than the final approach and downwind tracks fly on. And the reason for this is, again, because on final approach, airplanes need to be very precisely spaced apart from one another, and to achieve that precise spacing, the location that the base turn is going to have to occur at is going to change for each arrival. And so again, that's going to result in a more diverse set of points that those base turns are going to happen at. And that expanding and contracting of the base turns is what we call the trombone, because of the way it looks. It looks like a trombone handle going in and out. So that's just for everyone's reference. If you hear us refer to the trombone, that's what we're referring to. Next slide, please. So now I just want to run everyone through some graphics of flight tracks overlaid for each of the different configurations that we can use at Pearson, just to help everyone orient themselves when we're talking about arrivals or departures to particular runways, which communities those arrivals or departures would be overflying. So to start off with, we'll start off with the northeast, the area to the northeast of the airport. And for arrivals to runway 23, these would primarily impact this area. And the communities would be Maple Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Thornhill, and Rexdale primarily. Also in this area, if we move to the next slide, we have departures going off of runway 05. And again, areas primarily overflown by these departures would be Rexdale, Malton, Thornhill, and Maple Vaughan. Moving over to the southeast of the airport. So first we have arrivals to runway 24 left, 24 right, which are overflying Midtown Toronto, North York, and Markham. And then we have departures from runway 06 left and 06 right, which are again overflying Midtown Toronto, North York, as well as Weston. Moving on to the northwest of the airport, we have arrivals to runway 05, which are overflying Brampton, Georgetown, Milton, Meadowvale, and North Mississauga. And then we have departures from runway 23, which overfly Meadowvale, North Mississauga, Streetsville, Milton, and Georgetown. Moving on to the southwest of the airport, we have arrivals to runway 06 left and right, which overfly Long Branch, Oakville, Erin Mills, and Streetsville. And then departures from runway 24 left, 24 right, which overfly Streetsville, Erin Mills, and Oakville. And then finally, we have our north-south runway. So starting off with the areas to the north of the airport, we have arrivals to runway 15 left, 15 right, which mainly overfly Brampton and Malton. And then departures from 33 left, 33 right, which again, mainly overfly Brampton and Malton. And then last but not least, we have the areas to the south of the airport. So we have arrivals to runway 33 left, 33 right. These mainly overfly Etobicoke along the lakeshore, Alderwood, Long Branch, and Markland Wood. And then we have departures from runway 15 left, 15 right, which again overfly Etobicoke along the lakeshore, Alderwood, Long Branch, and Markland Wood. So that's just to help everyone orient themselves depending on which configuration we're in, which communities may experience some overflights of aircraft. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is our nighttime arrival procedures, which are called our RNAV-X procedures. And these are procedures that are used during the restricted hours that I referred to earlier, between midnight 30 and 6:30 a.m. And these procedures were designed to overfly less populated areas during those noise sensitive times. So the overnight hours, as I mentioned earlier, are much quieter from a traffic perspective. And so it gives some flexibility in terms of the routes that aircraft can fly. So you can see here, these routes look a little bit different from the standard arrival routes. And again, they're designed specifically to overfly the less populated areas during those noise sensitive hours. So here on screen, we have the RNAV X-ray approaches for runway 05 and 23. And then if we move to the next slide, we have the RNAV X approaches for runway 06 left, 24 right, and runways 06 right, 24 left. So that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions about what I just presented?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is Angela from Maple. Okay, this is the first time I've heard our city being mentioned in any of the presentations. And that explains lately why we're having all the traffic flying over our area. I'm concerned. I just want a clarification of the overnight, the less populated area. You didn't mention the area. What are the cities that you're flying over?
So NAV anyone from NAV Canada, feel free to expand on this. But if we go back to the maps, I can give some examples. So if we go
I'm
back,
a little bit in shock. Okay.
Yep, I can walk through some of that. So sorry, I don't know if it's possible to go back to the maps here.
I don't know.
Okay, so
Yeah,
if
that
you
map.
look, yeah, so if you look, for example, let's take that track south of Markham there, for example, right?
Right.
So typically during the day, they would fly that runway circuit pattern that I was saying with the base turns and the downwind in the final. But you can see here, this new RNAV X-ray track was designed to overfly the DVP there. So you can see that it's overflying the highway in that area. And again, that's an example of us, trying to leverage those quieter hours to design a procedure that can fly in an area that's less populated. So for example, over a highway, or if we look to the southwest of the airport there, the track between Acton and Georgetown. Typically during the day, a lot of aircraft will fly over Georgetown and we'll see a lot of arrivals overflying there. During the night, this gives us an opportunity to aim arrivals and the green space between Georgetown and Acton. So for each of these four areas, we've tried to design procedures that do just that, overfly some of these areas that are less densely populated than some of the areas that may be
Define less populated. I'm looking at Vaughan right now. What's a solid line going through? What's that?
So Vaughan, I know that the RNAV X-ray procedures were designed to overfly some rail yards and industrial areas in that space. So that's why the line is placed where it is. Again, of course, I mean, the airport is surrounded 360 degrees by communities. By no means are we saying that airplanes will not fly over anybody.
That's flying over Vaughan right now, because I hear them every night.
Can I just interrupt for a minute? I think maybe we should hand this question over to NAV Canada. Jonathan,
happy to jump in. Yeah, sorry, I was on mute when you first called on me, and Brian was doing great. So yeah, so there is that procedure that targets the train yard. So to Ryan's point, I think he said it quite well. The region is surrounded with population, right? So a night arrival is going to fly somewhere. What we've tried to do is aim it at a place where overall on its procedure, and it might still fly over some residential areas, but overall it's avoiding as many residential areas as possible.
Sorry, is this John?
Yes, that's correct.
Listen, John, we discussed this. Right beside Vaughan is the huge rail yard. We hear noises 24 hours from there. And this night thing started in the last 2 years. And the last time we discussed this with Nick, it was determined that Maple, it was not conducive to have the planes going overnight. But I hear them. They're low.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Okay.
Like, so where that night procedure that Ryan has on screen, is the one almost middle top of screen there.
Right.
That does go over the train yards, and that was specifically what we were looking to have that nice procedure pass over. Because it's not directly over homes, right?
Yes, it is. It is. It
goes over neighborhoods. Yes.
It goes over my house. I'm up at 2, at 3, sometimes at 4.
So what I do want to differentiate though is there are some. So the night procedure receives a portion of the traffic. There's still a lot of the traffic. And Ryan, I know you have another graphic that has kind of like more the ongoing profile, but
are you going to be putting a noise detector around there then? Because besides the rail siding, the humping, the uncoupling of the cars, and we have a roll machine there too.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have the airplanes. Okay, I just want to point that out. I'll look at the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that procedure is over that train yard. So absolutely, and
like only in the last 2 years, because the residents around here have noticed that, and you're doing your descending procedure there. That's the planes are coming in so low, and there's the jeering, the noises of the plane making those turns.
Yeah. So one of the things I do want to mention is that there's also, like, so for those night procedures, it's only a portion of the traffic that ends up flying it. There are other aircraft that might fly over the area that are not on that procedure as well. Just to kind of mention that it's depending on what you're seeing, it could be on the procedure or also just flying over the area based on the existing structure. So there is a mix there, but yeah.
But can't you define which is which?
So
The
there-
residents of Maple, okay, are noticing this. Okay. Okay. I said my point.
Yes, thank you, Angela.
Yes.
You have given
Yes.
us feedback, and I know you had the opportunity to also attend a session earlier as well as meet with
Yeah,
representatives.
well,
from
we didn't finish it. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you, and certainly thank you very much. Generally, before we move on to NAV Canada update, just if George, if your question is in regards to general operations, please, we'll give you the floor for a moment.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to showing the departure paths off, let's say, the east-west runways. And just that it should possibly be explained about the aircraft that appear to make immediate turns just after takeoff, that those are propeller aircraft or small jet aircraft that have special procedures that they're permitted to operate on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good point. I'd be happy to touch on that. So, yeah, so as George said, you can see that most of the tracks coming off the runway there are flying runway heading, and those big jets are subject to our noise abatement procedures. So most departures coming out of Toronto have to reach 3,600 feet before they're allowed to make a turn, and that's to get them high enough to reduce the noise impact that they make when that turn happens. As George pointed out, you can see that some of these tracks off the runway are making a turn immediately. And those are some of our quieter and lighter aircraft, like our propeller aircraft or piston aircraft or light jets, that due to their lower noise ratings, have been granted permission to turn earlier. And that's because a lot of these smaller aircraft are much slower. And so we need to get them out of the way quicker so that those big jets can continue to depart behind them. And so that's why you see some of these tracks materialize like that.
Hi, it's Nina Haidas from Maple. I wonder if I could ask a question.
Sure, Nina, just I see that Stephanie has her hand raised.
Yes,
Stephanie,
I'll go after Stephanie.
Thank you. Stephanie and Nina, I'll just remind you that these questions are in specific to what was presented. If you want to ask a general question about operations in your area, that comes up at the last portion of this meeting.
Okay, I just have a quick question about one of the slides. I don't know what RNAV is. RNAV X. Could someone just tell me what it is, please?
Absolutely. So RNAV stands for Area Navigation. It's not quite an acronym. It's a shortened. I guess it's almost an acronym. It stands for Area Navigation, and what it really is a type of procedure that the plane. It's like an invisible path in the sky that the plane can fly, and it's based on satellite positioning. So it uses satellites, and it differentiates itself from more traditional navigation where a plane would fly towards a signal on the ground. Now it's using satellite positioning to fly a path in the sky. And so that's what, so it is a bit technical. The X just means that's just the name we give it, because one airport could have multiple area navigation procedures. So this one it's called the RNAV X-ray, and it's just to make sure when we're talking to pilots and letting them know which procedure they're using, we call it the X-ray, the RNAV X-ray, and they know what they have to fly. So it's just the X part is just the naming convention.
Thank you very much.
Nina, did you still want to proceed with your question, or did you want to wait until later in the meeting?
No, it's about the same slide.
Okay.
So I see that some of the nighttime planes are going over the DVP, which is fantastic for the residents. Why can we not fly the planes over the 400 and take it away from the residential areas of Vaughan as well? That's my question.
So where is the 400? Do you have a pointer there just to confirm what the 400 is?
400, it's right. If you
start from the top middle. Yeah, top middle. Ryan, do you have a pointer?
Do you see?
So
sorry, Jonathan, I'm not controlling.
Somebody have a pointer?
I'm controlling, but
It is the white line that comes down right to the middle. There's a small 400 marked on it.
And it intersects with the procedure there. Okay, yeah, it's perfect. I just want to make sure. So the 400, yeah, exactly. So basically where we touch the 400 right there, that is from there on is basically the train yards. So while it could follow the 400, now it's overflying the train yards. And immediately to the west of the 400, it actually would bring it closer to some residential neighborhoods. The other aspect is we can only kind of come in so tight because the airplane still has to line up with the runway and needs a bit of time to do that. So bringing in a lot tighter is tricky. I'm going to talk about another technology in a moment that will give us some opportunities to have aircraft come in a bit tighter. Yeah, so that basically where it intersects there with the 400, it's already over a non-residential land.
And we have
And then south of that, it's actually residential, right? So that's the problem. So it would be great if they could line it up like they did with the other folks around the DVP. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, and one of the tricky things there is that the aircraft joining that procedure are coming from, typically are coming from the northwest. So they have to bank at a certain angle, so that could make it tricky, but it's an interesting comment. Thank you for that.
We have a question in the comments from Heather, and she asks, operationally, why do some aircraft follow nighttime arrival procedures and others do not?
That's a great question. And I think Ryan was just about to get into explaining that. So basically, so we have this procedure. There's a few reasons why we can and can't use it at times. Ideally, and I guess it depends where you live. We have heard that people want us to use them as much as possible. However, it depends on how many aircraft are in the sky. Some of the other graphics that Ryan showed us earlier showed us the downwind structure, and the downwind is actually used to help us sequence. Yeah, sure. One of the. Sorry, we'll pull one up here. There we go. So that downwind, you can see that's that line parallel basically to the airport, and that's used to be able to manage aircraft that are arriving from different directions and have them line up in a very sorted manner and a stable manner to ensure they can stay safely distanced from each other. That's what we have to do. We have to separate the aircraft. And so to have a line straight in coming right off, for instance, the lake in this instance where the night procedure is, we can't commit the aircraft, as many aircraft to that, because we can't space them. We use that downwind to allow for spacing. So basically what I'm trying to get at is that you need it to be fairly quiet to be able to clear aircraft on that procedure. If we have more than a couple aircraft in the sky, usually we can't clear an aircraft onto that procedure. It has to be fairly quiet. So that's the reason why not all aircraft fly it. And the other thing too is there's an aspect of the controller also being sure to be able to give that clearance in time, so the pilot can program their flight management system to pick it up in time. So there's a lot of tactical management aspects and that's the reason why it can't be used all the time. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Jonathan. I think why don't we move on to the NAV Canada update?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so if you maybe I should. Okay, sorry. If you've been to this meeting before, I know some of the names here have. I have a pretty straightforward update. It's a continuation of some of the things we have seen previously. If this is your first time, happy to either share resources if you follow up with the GTAA that kind of give a little more background. One of the things that was implemented back in 2015 is a change to procedures to allow aircraft to fly on a more continuous descent flight path. And one thing we did when we implemented that is we committed to, publishing the stats on that. And so that's what this slide is. It shows the percentage of aircraft flying a continuous descent operation. And so you can see, pre-implementation, we're anywhere around 60% of aircraft were flying it. That has increased to high 60s, low 70s as a percentage. It is a percentage of the traffic on the downwind. With quieter traffic conditions, obviously there's less aircraft in the sky. It's still a percentage of whatever was in the sky. So it's not a count, it's a percentage. So we can see it's kind of stable at the level it is now. We are doing some more work to identify new opportunities to increase continuous descent operations, but it did kind of reach the level that we had anticipated before implementation, but we're looking for ways to increase that use. If you go to the next slide, please. Another aspect that we've been measuring is the average level segment. So for aircraft don't achieve a continuous descent, how long are they staying at a level altitude? So an aircraft that's on a continuous descent tends to be at a lower engine setting, a little less flap usage, and it tends to be quieter. Where an aircraft that's leveled off needs to apply a bit more thrust, use more flaps to stay level, so that can be quiet, louder. So when we look at the distance of level segment, you can see pre-implementation is around just under, I guess, or just over 5.5 nautical miles. And today, you know, around we're getting closer to about 4 nautical miles. Now, recently, it's gone even a bit lower. That is likely partially due to quieter traffic environment. So even if an aircraft is level, we can turn them towards the airport sooner when there's less aircraft in the sky. Nonetheless, it is a metric that did show an improvement in level flight. Next slide, please. So we were talking a bit before, and we had a great question on, you know, can you turn in at a different location, or you know, how can you turn in tighter? That is something that's being looked at through with something called RNPAR, or Required Navigation Performance Authorization Required. It's very technical, but it's RNPAR. And that, combined with a new standard from the International Civil Aviation Organization, allows an aircraft to fly a very precise procedure. But this procedure, what it does is when an aircraft is on it, we have track containment. So we know where the aircraft is. And this is something we're looking at deploying to the south side, where there's opportunity, south side of the airport. And what that would do is mean aircraft on the north side, which sometimes can be lower due to what we call the high-low split, will be able to stay higher more often than not. So, or more often than they are now anyways. So it's something we're exploring. It's kind of fairly leading edge. It's newer. It's newer in the industry. It's a new standard. We're looking to deploy it very cautiously at Toronto. We're in the initial phases of you know, technical analysis to make sure this is something we can deploy. Before anything would be implemented, of course, we'd have the appropriate public consultation, and we'd also be bringing it to this forum here. So it's something that's exciting. It is in the Helios report, which is a third-party review that NAV Canada had initiated, asked an outside party to review our airspace to find opportunities for noise mitigation, and this was one of those items that came out of that. And so we're now, having gone through a lot of work, if you're at the last meeting, I gave a fairly extensive update on the items that were in that review and that we've completed or that are underway. This is really the big next item on that list. So with that, that kind of explains the topic. It is fairly technical. We'll have more information as it develops, but to help, I do have there was a link posted by my colleagues at the GTAA to a video that explains established on RNPAR. Obviously, sharing a video on this platform, it can be not all very smooth, so we've provided the link. I invite you to take a look at it, maybe copy it and take a look at it when you have a chance. It gives a little more a visual explanation with some moving tracks of what RNPAR can do and the potential of what it might do at Toronto Pearson. Just to give you a last bit of context, it's a video from Calgary International where we deployed this technology, and it was the first in the world where this technology was deployed at that airport. So there you go. That's the update that I have, and I certainly welcome any questions at this time.
Thanks, Jonathan. Then we'll move on to Cynthia and an update from the GTAA for residents.
Can I ask one quick question? Sorry. I didn't put my hand up. I just jumped in.
Sure.
I would just like to know what INMB is. I don't know what that is.
Sure. That's the Industry Noise Management Board. That is a technical board made up of air traffic controllers, pilots, and other the airport authority technical staff that looks at supports the implementation of noise mitigation activities. So they take a look at it from a very technical side, from a feasibility perspective, and looking at the concepts that are are identified in the Helios report. That really has been their work plan, but even other emerging concepts out there in terms of noise mitigation, they take a look at it and try to find opportunities to deploy it at Toronto where possible.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Lila, over to you. And just for residents, we have about 10-15 minutes more of presentation from the GTAA about some initiatives, and then we'll turn the floor over for your general questions.
Good evening, everyone. So I have just a quick update for you on the airport's maintenance and winter operations. So our 2020 airfield summer construction program was completed in November, and all of our runways, that includes our preferential runways, have reopened and are fully available now. We do still continue to conduct our normal routine maintenance activities, which require short runway closures. These are communicated out via noise advisories that we post on our website, torontopearson.com. So we're getting into our winter season now, and this means we have our de-icing facility up and running. Our airfield maintenance crews are also out conducting activities such as snow clearing, keeping our aprons, runways, and taxiways clean and free of snow. So runways do get impacted when the crews are out cleaning and treating the surfaces based on when we have active weather, such as a snow event. For the 2020-2021 winter season, we have closed runway 06 right, 24 left. So it's a temporary closure for the winter. By doing this, we can allow our crews to focus on delivering the infrastructure that's basically reflective of what our anticipated operating schedule is for the winter and our anticipated demand. And so this also allows us to optimize our financial resources. So that's the end of my maintenance update. I will pass things over to my colleague, Cynthia Woods.
Were there any questions for Lila before I go ahead? Oh.
Angela?
Angela? Angela, we can't hear you. Perhaps you're still on mute.
Okay. With the closure of this runway, how is that going to affect the other runways, I guess? Like, how does it work? Are other runways going to be used, or I'm not too sure.
Not, no, this doesn't really have an impact. So that's what I was saying about basically our current operating schedule. And the anticipated demand does not require use of this runway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a brief update of our noise management action plan. So our noise management action plan is a set of initiatives that are designed to further enhance our noise management program. If you haven't seen it, it is available on our website, and we can provide a link with the materials after the meeting. So just to go through some of the deliverables we've achieved to date. We have launched the noise management forums. This is one of those new noise management forums, the public meeting. We've also got a neighborhood table forum, a political briefing forum, and a noise accountability forum. So those were all to further expand how we engage with different community and industry members. We've published a new updated complaint process we completed our first A320 family audit and began tracking usage against the 2019 audit. And that's referring to a retrofit that's available for this certain type of aircraft that has a known noise issue, there's a whistling noise from the airframe, and there is a retrofit available. So that's a program that we've initiated, and we've been following airlines and their progress on that retrofit. We launched the 6 ideas, which were 6 ideas for noise mitigation, along with NAV Canada, and the majority of those have either been launched or tested and trialed. So we've currently are in idea 6, the revised preferential runway program. We have an ongoing trial that will started in February of 2020 and will continue till February 2021. We launched Insightful, which is a new noise web portal, which provides residents with more self-serve information pertaining to their own area about aircraft operations, how they affect them, and provides a number of different statistics. We began reporting a new set of noise reports, which are also available through Insightful. And we began a pilot school air conditioning program. That is, the work has been conducted on a local school. The HVAC has been installed, and we're just waiting for it to go live in the spring once some additional electrical work is done by the school board. So just to talk about what we're currently working on in relation to the plan, the Idea 6 trial of the preferential runway system continues, and we will also be developing the final pieces of the noise management forms. We continue to monitor the A320 series retrofit program. We're in the process of developing metrics and engaging with the industry and community stakeholders for a new Fly Quieter and Greener reporting program, which is comparing airlines and operators based on a variety of metrics. And we'll continue to update on the night flight restriction program. And of course, as mentioned, the pilot school air conditioning program will continue until it's completed next spring. And as mentioned, just the remaining components of the noise management forums, which is an external audit and the community proposal review process. We will be continuing with the community proposal review process. However, the external audit is on hold at the moment and may be combined with a best practices study that we conduct when preparing for our next noise management action plan. Were there any questions about the noise management action plan? Is that someone with their hand up?
Yeah, it's George with his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, George.
I just wanted to make the comment that the analysis and development of alternate night flight restriction program was to be completed by June of 2019, and that's not happened. That's according to your short-term goals for the noise action plan.
Hi, George. The analysis was complete and did come forward with a series of recommendations. And what we opted to do to ensure that we didn't have any unintended impact that didn't get captured in the modeling was we decided to trial the program for a year, which we started this year. It had to be postponed from last year, which would have been the year when it should have been, due to what was the planned runway maintenance last year. So it has been.
Just wait a minute.
So that rationale is solid, and it has been communicated.
Wait, there has been nothing communicated about changes to the night flight restriction program.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the preferential runway.
No, I'm talking about the night flight restriction program, where there was some presentation on some indication of where the aircraft originate or destinations are, but nothing looking at examining the types of aircraft currently permitted in the restricted hours.
Thank you for your feedback, George.
I'm sorry, I lost you.
No, I did.
Okay.
I didn't hear a question. I think you just made note. You wanted to make note that You felt that we were delayed on the night flight restriction program review. Yes, and that
So
is.
Do you have any target date for that completion of a review?
At this point, George, as we communicated to the neighborhood table last night, the budget will, for those residents who aren't familiar, we do have a night flight restriction program that does limit the number of flights that are allowed to operate between 12:30 and 6:30. It is capped by a budget. The budget for the upcoming years will remain the same as it was in 2019. But at this time, a review of the night flight restriction program is on pause because we are not in a position to do anything but support the recovery of the industry. And we will be mindful about the commitments in the review, but at this point in time, it is on pause.
And I think it's just important to mention too that the actual numbers of the budget of the night flights that we had just this past year and what we're expecting next year are approximately 10,000, which is just similar to the levels that we had in 1997. So this is what we're expecting for the upcoming year, which is 50% of the budget. And again, numbers that we haven't seen since the late 1990s.
That may be true, but you are not making a commitment to stay at that level.
No, we're not making a commitment. We're making an expectation of what we're seeing in the reservations and what we expect for this year. But that's half of what we've been seeing in recent years.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the noise management action plan?
Hi, Stephanie. My hand is up, so I don't know how this works, but anyway, I'm just curious to know what the pilot school is. Is it a school for pilots? Is that what it is?
No, it's I suppose there needs to be some more punctuation in there. It's
I think pilot belongs before program.
Yeah, school air conditioning pilot program. So it's the air conditioning program. So what some other airports have done as part of their programs, and it was something that we were exploring and was recommended through our best practices review, was air conditioning programs for local schools so that they could keep their windows closed and therefore protect them from aircraft noise. So we did pursue that. We had a set of criteria that we matched any of the applications that we received from local schools. And we did decide on one school that's in the Malton area. And we have already provided the funding to the school board. The installation's complete of the HVAC. But they're just finishing up with the electrical work that they needed to do to upgrade so that they could support the HVAC. And then that will be turned on in the spring of 2021. So that's what that's referring to.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
No problem. Anybody else? Oh, Al?
Yes, you mentioned here the A320 series, that there was going to be tracking the usage in the audit, but you don't mention actually what's happening with it. And it was originally suggested that Transport Canada might come up with a penalty against these airlines that continue this with this older airline if the retrofit wasn't done. Is there anything being done on that, or are they just continuing with and analyzing this audit and then going after the airlines that continue to use this older aircraft?
I can't speak to what Transport Canada's plans might be in relation to the A320. We have been monitoring, and we do produce regular audits that are available on the website, so we can send you a link to that. So there's no plans for that at this point, but as far as part of our quieter fleet incentive program, we are looking at what actions we can take after 2022 to further encourage the adoption of the retrofit. So we can provide that information after the meeting and make sure it's included.
Are you going to send me an email then, or?
Well, we can include it with the materials right on the website, but we can also send you an email separately, sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Was there anybody else? No?
Just about that retrofit, the
Yes.
A320 retrofit. So I went on an airside tour in 2018 with Russ, and he mentioned it. But he mentioned that there's no way to force the airlines to do anything. And apparently it's not very expensive. So it's something to do with under the wings, and it's about $100 each kit. So like hardly anything at all. So I don't know. Sounds like it's probably still, we'll ask politely and we really hope you do it. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't think can anything be done.
Well, they have made some commitments, and we are expecting a high retrofit rate. That is all made before COVID, and we know that the airlines, are not in the same position they were at that time. But we are seeing progress. We do report on it, and the costs too. Even though the parts may not be expensive, there's a lot more costs involved when you take an aircraft out of service for a period of time. So I think there is a lot more cost to them than just the cost of the part, which may in itself not be that expensive.
And Stephanie, just to follow up on that, thank you, Cynthia, is we did send a note to the airlines to ask to operate that aircraft or that family series of aircraft, what their intentions were about keeping that aircraft and what their retrofit intentions were. And this is where the audit come from. We were confident that by 2022, at that time, 90% of the operations at Toronto Pearson would be with retrofitted aircraft. So we felt that the airlines were voluntarily taking on the retrofit, and at that point in time didn't feel the need to apply a fine or an incentive. But certainly after that 2022 horizon, we may have to explore if some airlines want to continue to operate the non-retrofitted aircraft. We may have to explore a fine. But at this point, we don't need the stick because the carrot's working.
Okay, thanks for the extra info.
So this is the period where we hand the floor over to residents to ask specific questions. We would ask that when you do speak or ask your question, if you could introduce yourself by your first name and then your nearest intersection to where you live, and then we are able to pull that up on Google Maps so that we're able to understand where you live and what operations might be impacting you.
Hey, Robin, sorry to interject. Postal code would be easier.
Oh, cheers, then postal code if you don't mind. Thanks, Yace, no problem. So any questions or comments? Angela. You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
L6A1T8. I just a question here. The night flight restrictions, how does that work? Like, who makes the decisions of what lane to take? Is it the pilot? Is it NAVCAN? Hello?
Sorry, I think you're touching on a couple of subjects there in terms of night flight restrictions versus nighttime procedures.
Well,
and I think
I'm just
you're
curious.
more about procedures, right?
Okay.
I'm not sure that's what I think it is, but
I'm just wondering, like, what I see at my end is that we do have I don't know if it's the night flight restrictions or the planes that come at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who decides that the pilot can go over this residential area?
Right. Okay. So there's a couple of things there to unpack. So the night flight restriction is about how many planes can fly at night, and that's a certain envelope that the Toronto Pearson Airport has. So that's one thing. Where they fly, there's a few factors. So one will be what's the runway that's in use. So what direction is the wind, and then where's the plane coming from? And those two things will really determine, overall where the plane's coming from and what type of procedure it might use. In addition, when possible, we try to clear them onto the night procedure if the traffic scenario permits it. So there's a few things that might influence why it flies over the area. Now, no matter what, to get to, those arrivals that you see coming basically from the northwest. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Heis. They're going to fly over somewhere, right, to get to the airport. And so what you're seeing there, and actually it's maybe less the night procedure. Those are aircraft turning onto what's called the base leg, to a large extent. So we have to sequence them and use the airspace structure, and the controllers are managing that traffic to get them lined up with the runway.
But do the pilot or whoever, do they say, hey, can I take these coordinates? Or is it work between the NAVCAN? And I'm just curious because we never used to have that. It's just that like all of a sudden one comes by, and then you go outside, and then you watch 2 or 3 more come by, and then they do that descending. What's it called again? Continuous descending, and they go at a sharp angle, and you can see them going lowering and lowering. Yeah. And the noise is incredible.
Land, right?
Yeah, I know. You can see sometimes I swear you can see the gears coming down. There was one the other day. Anyways, okay. Okay, I'm just wondering how that works.
Yeah.
Because it's loud. And are you saying now that these planes, that gentleman that talked about, I forgot what it's called, to stop to make the noise on the wings?
Oh, that's a different thing. So that's.
I'm just saying, do these planes not have that? That's causing them to making this gearing, screeching noise. Okay.
So it's the aircraft. So that topic is about how the wing of the plane makes noise because there's a cavity. Some planes have that cavity. Some have a retrofit to reduce the noise. Some don't. It's still an aircraft, so even with the retrofit, it does still make noise, but it does reduce the noise. So yeah, some of those planes you would see there would
some
be
whistling noise.
Yeah, it's a kind of high pitched sound.
Is Air Canada? Are they all fitted with them? Or is it the international? Oh,
it's a type of aircraft, so it's not dependent on where it flies from. If you're talking about the.
Well, she was asking who like how many are.
Because at the last meeting, I thought like there was a deadline, and so I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was saying that Air Canada didn't have them rectified yet, as yet.
As I mentioned, by 2022, 90% of the A320 family series aircraft who are operating at Toronto Pearson will be retrofitted.
So is that a new date?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, and that is coming a long way. I know it took a while for some of it to get going, but that is a significant change in how many had that cavity. So
yeah, but I'm looking at your map here. That's a real sharp turn you're making there, coming over the house. That explains the noise and the shaking.
So they are turning. Some of them will be turning for sure, and that's true that when it turns, the sound of the plane changes, right? Because the engines change where they're pointing, and it can be more noticeable for some people.
I think it's no
aircraft are turning. Now, just to clarify, so those yellow lines you see there, each one of those lines represents a different arrival. So you can see them coming from a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
But each one is a different arrival, and they'll fly, even though they're using a structure, they'll turn at different locations.
But I know prior to the pandemic, they were all along Empress Street. It's like they were 5 minutes apart. It was a circle of wagons, then going over to Pentland and Cromwell, heading towards the rail yard with the screeching noise that they make. Anyways, thank you.
Nina.
Hi. Just looking at the same map, since I am from Maple as well, can you please show me where my postal code lands on this? So I'm at L6A to M5. Thank you. So that looks like.
Where are you?
An intersection of a lot of planes. coming over our area.
Yeah, the aircraft you would see there, some are kind of coming more straight in, the ones that are coming kind of from the top left corner there. But a lot of them are turning off also what's called the downwind, where you see that kind of line coming from, it's a concentrated line. And then we start turning them off to line up onto the final approach. So definitely where you are, you would see some of those aircraft turning onto what we call base leg. Some of them coming straight in, but a lot of them would be turning off base leg.
How, what's the altitude that they're flying at when they're sort of swooping over the house here, please? Just so I understand better what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I know the GTA has some average altitudes. I'd say, sorry, Dave, would you say about 4,000 feet typically when they're turning there, Dave?
Yeah, at that area, it's about 4,000 feet. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, about 4,000 feet.
Because on the south side, they would be around 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any other questions?
Stephanie.
Hello, I forgot to turn my mic on. I could go all night. I got loads of questions, but okay, so first of all, I don't know who everybody is or from which organization you folks are. So can I just know who's from NAV, please?
Yeah, Jonathan Bagg. I'm the, I'll turn on my camera for a second so you can see me. I'm Jonathan Bagg. I'm the Director of Stakeholder and Industry Relations at NAV Canada. And you can see my colleague, Dave Parco. He's responsible for the tower terminal operation at the Toronto Area Control Center.
And Angela, may we ask who you are and where you and your postal code?
Stephanie, I think.
Stephanie, I apologize. Sorry, apologies, Stephanie.
Oh no, I used to live in Milton, but I'm in Barrie now. I'm an aviation student, and that's why I'm on board here. It's out of interest. So another question until I can give it to somebody else, rather. Somebody talked about this, the satellite positioning. So when it was around the RNAV commentary, and you referred to it as the invisible path in the sky. And that's what, is that what permits you to bring in one aircraft from like 3,000 feet and another from 4,000 feet? So it's all got to do with the separation, the satellite positioning?
Yeah, so I mean, everything that, Dave's team, the people that work for him, they're the air traffic controllers that are managing the traffic. So everything they do is a big part of what they do is making sure planes are safely separated from each other. And that's what we use. We call it providing separation, but it's really creating distance between the aircraft. So, and it's a very regulated methodology that, we require a certain distance between aircraft. Our area navigation is basically what allows us to create roads in the sky. And those roads are often used. Sometimes we don't need to use them because the traffic's quieter, or we actually need to take them off the road so they can, get in front of someone or behind someone else to make sure we're separating traffic. And an example where there's a road in the sky, if you want to point out a downwind there, I think Heise, you're controlling. If you just want to point out a spot where there's, a procedure. No hand. Yeah, okay, there you go. So you can see where his arrow is, where you can see a lot of aircraft coming in and joining at that spot. There's a couple of, procedures, RNAV procedures that meet up there, and that's an example of a procedure that a plane could fly.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, so when you said satellite positioning, were you talking about ADSB?
No, that's different. So when we talk about
Okay.
ADSB, okay.
So we don't have to talk about that. That
Okay.
was just a no answer. Because it's a longer answer than.
Yeah, it could take a minute or two, but it is ADSB is surveillance, so us seeing the planes. RNAV is how the plane positions itself and flies in the sky.
Okay, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Any additional questions? Angela. You're on mute, I think.
Get so excited here. Nina had a great question for you. What is the altitude when you do your continuous descending then?
So
can you go back to my postal code?
Yeah, and I think it's pretty close to the postal code we have there. But yeah, as a principle, so when they're at roughly the point you see there, which isn't too far from you, but yeah, maybe
well,
we
it's
should
kind of far.
Okay, let's put up your postcode. Sorry, I don't want to simplify.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead. Yeah.
L6A 1T8.
Yeah, okay, so yours is a bit closer to the airport. So what happens is, Heis, can you highlight the point where they turn off the downwind? So when they're there, they're at about 4,000 feet. By the time they line up with the runway, right around there, they're descending to line up at that point. So they'll be somewhere between 4,000 and 3,000 feet. Where you are, probably mostly around 4, because they do establish on final at 4 for the most part. Dave, is that correct?
Okay, but I can see windows. I can see the color. I can see labels. I can one time, like if I take my anyways, I can see the plane, the whole plane, and you're saying it's 4,000 feet.
Yeah, approximately 4,000 feet above sea level. Yeah.
Okay, sea level.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's some ground elevation there.
Okay,
too.
so when I open my back sliding door, I have a tree line, which is not. I mean, they're not that mature. I just see it. Like I don't even have to put my neck up. That's how close it comes. But you're saying that's 4,000 feet.
Yeah, generally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to get some.
with some variance, but yeah, generally close to 4,000 feet.
Well, how come when I go to track, it says 2,000? I got as low as 1,900. Like I'm confused.
It says 1,900 when you go to WebTrack.
Yeah.
Are those any chance that WebTrack has meters? That wouldn't make sense either. I'm sorry, I was asking a GTA.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay for sure. Thanks for trying to answer.
I'm confused because it's low.
It's George Thackeray. They definitely are in feet above sea level, and it could be some aircraft that is not operating to and from Pearson.
No, they're going around that circle. They're going to the airport.
Yeah, 1,900 sounds very low because they need time to do a stable approach. So that would be an unusual occurrence if it was a Pearson aircraft. 1,900.
What's Air Canada? It's Air Canada.
Angela, we've got that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
We've got that analysis that Francine did for
Yeah.
you, so we'll send you the full deck. I know we weren't able to get through it all, but it's got a ton of analysis.
I'm just saying the difference between WebTrack and I haven't had time to go into in-flight. I had some problems, but I'll talk to you that later. But I'm just saying there's a difference. There's a variance. Okay. Thank you.
And George, it's Michael Belanger. I'm with the GTA. Just for everyone who else is on the call, I would ask that the questions that are directed towards the GTA or NAV Canada be addressed by those that are part of that organization. So just for clarity, we ask that be respected, please.
As a regular user of WebTrack, I was just making a comment.
But we've also heard from members of the public tonight, George, that they don't know who's who. So please let the representatives from the GTA or NAV Canada address those questions.
Yes, I do apologize. That is a complicated factor of doing these meetings online when we can't see each other. And I was remiss this evening. I do also apologize. We didn't do introductions of those who were present from the GTAA and NAV Canada. Normally we do have formal introductions. So actually at this point, maybe just to formalize that, and as we continue this conversation, if all the representatives from GTAA because you've been introduced to NAV Canada, Jonathan and Dave are here, could just quickly turn on their camera and introduce themselves and their role. And again, I apologize to all our residents. I would normally have done that at the beginning and I completely forgot. I'm sorry. So again, my name is Robin Connolly and I'm with the GTAA. Folks, colleagues, if you don't mind just flipping on your camera and introducing yourselves, that'd be great.
Evening, everyone. I'm Michael Belanger. I'm also with the GTA. I'm the Director of Aviation Programs and Compliance.
Cynthia, do you want to go next and just unmute?
I'm Cynthia Woods, and I'm the manager of the Noise Management Office.
Yes, do you mind going next?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, Malatam with the Noise Management Office Senior Officer.
And Lila, if you don't mind.
Good evening, Lila Barrett, Manager of Air Traffic Management and Aviation Regulatory Programs for the GTAA.
And Ryan, I think you introduced yourself when you spoke.
Yeah, Ryan Lees from the GTAA as well.
And we also have Fran. I see you, you're mute.
Hope. It's Francine Donaldson, Air Traffic Management and Noise Performance.
Sorry, apologies again. I should have done that at the beginning and I was remiss. So that is the GTAA team and you've been introduced to the NAV Canada team. Thank you. Nina, over to you. I worry you're on mute.
Thank you. My apologies to everyone. What is the acceptable altitude at which planes can fly over residential areas according to, I guess, Canadian standards? Because I know that my aunt in Australia says that there they do not fly over residential below 5,000.
So the main probably reference point would be Canadian aviation regulations, and it's not. It's more of a it's more of a safety requirement that aircraft can't fly below 1,000 feet unless they're landing or taking off. So that's probably the main reference point in terms of actual altitude requirement. Now. Obviously, these aircraft are descending to land, but they're all well above that altitude.
Nina, did you have another question?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Are there any other questions? Going once.
Just a comment. Mm-hmm. I think you folks have done a really good job tonight, and I've enjoyed listening to you, and I've learned a lot. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. It's always an evolution, especially in these online forums, about the best way to communicate as often. There's sort of a charades that often will happen when we're explaining, and Jonathan can attest to this, when we're explaining how planes fly. And certainly it's helpful to have one common screen and a pointer that we can all look at, which is a little bit more challenged virtually. So a big thank you to residents who do come and ask their questions and bear with sort of that it's a little bit more challenging to be interactive and share. But I do hope you all took opportunity to attend the drop-in sessions. And also always happy to meet and give a personal briefing at any time. And again, especially since it's increasingly difficult in this form, very happy to do that. It's very important in our job to work with you to understand the operations and impacts overhead and the programs that we're doing to help mitigate it. And I always also learn something at every meeting as well. With no further questions, Thank you to the residents who attended. Thank you to our colleagues from NAV Canada, and of course to my colleagues from the GTAA. Again, I do apologize for that late introduction. Please all take good care. Hi, Dave. Please all take good care in this holiday season. It's good to know that folks are healthy and well, and I hope that continues for you and all your loved ones. We haven't set the meetings schedule for the 2021 meetings as yet. But we will send a follow-up email to this meeting when the materials are available, so you can take a look at them, as well as links to a couple other documents that Cynthia mentioned. And we'll communicate when we have set the 2021 meetings. But generally they happen in and around the quarterly mark. So March or April is when we'll connect again, and who knows, perhaps it may be in person. But if not, thank you again for your patience with this happening virtually. Jonathan, Dave, any parting words from NAV Canada?
Just thank you to everyone for their time. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our project work and then discuss the community's noise concerns. Thank you. And
I always enjoyed being a technical reference for you. Anything else you need, let me know.
Excellent. Great. Well, folks, go out and enjoy your evening. I think I'm going to go treat myself to a holiday cocktail. Have a good night.
Good night.